Was the meeting supposed to be an hour later for you?
For me, yeah, I think so. I think it is supposed to be an hour later. Yeah, that's why I remember. I'll look now. No, it's now.
Yeah, I thought like I might have scheduled the meeting, so maybe it didn't change with the daylight savings.
Yeah, Ashish is asking because.
Okay, so Rudraksh won't be joining us today, and did Rodolfo or Mario mention anything, Lee?
I'm looking now. I don't see a note from them. No. They might also be on. It might be a North American holiday that gets celebrated Thanksgiving. I'm not sure. I think a lot of times Canada will celebrate a lot of the same, some of the same events, and so Central America might as well. So yeah, but we should take a look. I'll identify the link, or I'll grab the link to the UI build failure. Maybe we'll be able to figure it out.
Sure. All right. So let's officially start the meeting. Welcome everyone to the Meshery build and release meeting. Today is the 25th of November, and yeah, let's start off with the Meshery v0.6 release. So as per our last discussion, we are all green in terms of releasing a release candidate. So and one PR that was on the pipeline was Rudraksh's PR that did some fixes. So is that merged? Oh, I guess not. Okay, it is merged. So I guess this was the only thing that was holding us back from the release.
So, quick question: do you know that there's Utkarsh? You might know this better on some of the adapters and the adapter library and Meshkit and Meshery operator and MeshSync. Do you, not that those can be released independently, but now is an opportune time to rev them. And so I don't know if you know, have those been released? Many of those been released recently, or?
I'm not sure actually. Yeah.
Do you, do you mind taking a look at the operator, MeshSync, and Meshkit and the adapter library, like those four, and I'll try to take a look at the adapters themselves.
Okay.
Nice. And actually, Ashish, I didn't realize you were on as well. So Ashish, that's probably good. That's actually something good for you to do, is the part that I was going to do, which is go check out the adapters. I think, basically the question is, if there's any material commits that have been merged since the last release of an adapter, it's in our best interest to go ahead and make a release. At this point, all of the adapter version numbers should probably be, except for Citrix and NSM, they should probably all be at a v0.5. So I'll coordinate that with Ashish because I think he had to, his internet's bad. But as we lean into the .6 release of Meshery itself, that'll be, it's about time, or after that, we'll want to rev, the next time that we rev those other components, we can go ahead and bump up to that minor .6.
Sounds good. So like, should we make an RC right now or?
Yeah.
Okay. So after this meeting, I will make an RC and yeah, like we can let it sit for a while and then gradually progress towards v0.6. Any other concerns with this topic? Any other items that needs to be accounted for?
Is everybody able to build and run Meshery? Like I had a corruption in my database, or I just Meshery server wasn't able to write to the database, and I deleted it. Then I built Meshery, redeployed Meshery. It still wasn't able to. Like I don't know if there's some, if there was, yeah, I don't know. Right now, I'm not able to build and run Meshery with database. Nobody else experiencing that?
Nope.
Let's try this while we're on the call as well. I'm curious, Vedant, on the call, have you ever attempted to build Meshery or run it locally? Nope. Okay. Yeah, no problem. And Vedant, have you ever run Meshery just using Meshery CTL, like just as a user would run Meshery? We can keep going.
Okay, so the next topic is building and reducing Wasm filters. So Utkarsh, could you give some idea?
Yeah, actually, even I will have to sort of ask that regarding both. Actually, I could understand what the issue was about. But what I'm supposed to add on here, that's something I had to ask. Also, regarding the comment on the doc, that's also something that I had to ask about. So yeah, basically, I'm the one who would be getting to know what this is about.
Yeah, his name isn't. Yeah. So as we go to ingest seed content, we will need for these filters to be pre-built, and so right now we don't have workflow that builds each filter and then also release upon release that those binaries are release artifacts that can then be referenced as part of seed content ingestion. And so it's like, yeah, we need the ability to build and release anyway, but the need for seed content places some pressure on that. So yeah, Rudrox had built a few of these in the past, potentially. We don't have standard workflow just yet for compiling Rust, but conceptually, if we automate, well, hopefully we have written down cargo or whatever else we're using. So yeah, that's about not a high priority, but isn't just an item in the backlog. Rust up. And then, so Ashish, just an item for you to mentally track what, as and when those were to ever be published, or that workflow ever comes through.
Yeah, I have made a note of that. After a workflow comes for that, and we have releases for it. Two things would need to be changed. First is that inside of the make file, inside that make not the make file, actually the Docker file, I'll have to change some code so that right now the only release that is available for the filters, I'm using that instead of the latest release. So I'll change that to fetch for the latest version, and the same code would be changed in the runtime seeding of the content. So I'm keeping a track of that.
Yes.
So did we get that covered?
Yep. Yeah. Just an understanding of what the ask is. Our convention of listing people's names is like, hey, if it's in square brackets, that's the person that's going to speak to it. But we kind of don't have a convention for, I guess my name should have gone there so I could speak to it to kind of hand it to Utkarsh or to Rudraksh. It doesn't really matter, but yeah, yep. That was just, that's that one.
All right. So we have a review for Ashish's workflow on Meshery adapters. So Ashish, final update.
Final update. I'll share my screen. So
Actually,
okay. So
sorry. Ideally, you would be presenting it from the docs that are written.
Yeah, I was going to go there as well.
Oh, okay. Cool.
Can you, Navind, can you share the link for the doc in the chat?
Yep. I'll try to find it.
Build and release. Yeah, I've got it here. So I have updated the current behavior inside of the doc, and then have reflected the exact same thing inside of the PR that I've made. So yeah, this is a step by step. This was the prerequisite of that workflow. So that workflow needs another job to run before that workflow actually runs. And this basically goes through what is the prerequisite for it. One of which is to actually upload the pattern file dynamically as an artifact, which would be then downloaded in the subsequent workflow that is referenced. And then this is the step by step of what this workflow that is referenced in all of the adapters would do. And after that, I've added the expected inputs and what's the expected output behavior. And I've added the exact same thing inside of the if we go to the preview. Yeah, so I've added it here as well. So yeah, that's the update from my side. And this was just to confirm that, okay, so about the token thing that was being discussed in that thread. So the final update is that when we access secrets, what happens is that the secrets that the workflow tries to access is not from the from the fork that is actually making the PR, but it tries to access the secret on the basically the master, which actually the on which the PR is being made. So of course there is no way we can access it unless we are the workflow actually executes inside of the master. So I haven't removed the logic where we do not use the remote provider at all. So if the secret is empty, we fall back to the local provider, and local provider is also available in the kernel. So in this PR, so Rudraksh made a fork and we tried this. So everything works fine in this case. So because there's of course no need for any tokens, all the checks passed. So so this so of about where the patent file is set and uploaded. So you can go through that doc. I have documented everything here. So any questions regarding this thing?
So the regurgitate, so the docs that you've written down, they generically describe the test harness that we have now, this set of workflows, and their purpose. The particulars of what's being tested sounds like we don't have listed in here, maybe in part because it's supposed to, like, the generic capability is to be able to receive a pattern file, which could do any number of things. What we might want to then reflect on is the fact that we have test cases defined in a spreadsheet. And so we could begin to itemize what test cases are covered by patterns, or by patterns that are then scheduled here. Now, part of the thing that needs to be reflected on as well is when these are being run. So these are being run on PR to master, prior to merge.
Yeah.
For each adapter repo.
Yeah.
Okay. Good. You know about how long it takes for this to run?
I have. It depends. I mean, it took of. Where does it show the time? Does anyone know where does it show the time for the action to run? I think it might show it here. It took 13 minutes, and this is because I took a 5-minute sleep in between, and 1 minute sleep, and that 5-minute sleep was to make sure that all the pods. Because according to me, if it takes more than 5 minutes, I guess the pod there is some issue. So I have said that I've hard coded that to 5 minutes, and as well as there are other sleep times of around I guess 60 seconds or so at max. So the whole sleep time would be around 6 minutes, and or the entire time the bottleneck is basically the amount of time it takes to build the image. That's basically what's taking most of the time, because we actually after checking out and we check out the code of the branch that is making the PR. So we build this new image, and this takes almost around, I don't know, like 5 to 6 minutes it takes to actually build this image. So the total comes out to be the rest of the things take around in seconds. So this is kind of the bottleneck of entire thing, and plus that 5-minute sleep, so it goes to 10 to 12 minutes, 13 minutes, 12 minutes.
Okay. Well, where we're sleeping for 5 minutes, that would be nice if that was like a 5-minute timeout, but while the timeout is sleeping, that in the meantime, we're polling for, like, we're checking on our first test assertion, and that way you might exit the sleep early, because you don't necessarily need to wait for 5 minutes if it's deployed within a minute.
Okay, I'll do it.
Yeah, good.
Well, and so this is, I was going to move us on a little bit from this to reflect on how these workflows be used for Meshery perf, like another component, or Meshery operator, and then ultimately like for Meshery itself. But we don't have to get into that right now. Utkarsh, if you had something more.
Yeah, so just two things. One is in the workflow, it is taking probably pattern name, at least what I could see. But pattern names are not unique. So in that case, how would it identify which pattern is being referred to? And the second is I see a download pattern file stage. So and that is, I think Piyush was the one who implemented this particular command in Meshery, and I think it already supports HTTP based imports. So instead of local file reference, you can directly mention a URL. It would actually pass it on, do the pulling. Basically, it will actually pass it on to the endpoint, and it will take care of that. So that's just two things.
Okay, so first of all, on the second thing, the thing would be that the entire point of doing this is to make that pattern file dynamic. So this set pattern file job would be responsible to make changes into that pattern file. So what I'll have to do is to first create that pattern file and then upload it somewhere, not using this action that I'm using right now, and then download it from there. And this name pattern file is just a construct of this particular action. It's like a key value pair. So for example, when I upload, and that's I have also mentioned in the docs that when this action slash upload hyphen artifact action would be used to actually upload this, and it has to be uploaded with this key, because this is the key that I'm using inside of the workflow to catch that back, to catch that particular artifact that's uploaded. So this is not uploaded anywhere else. This job takes care of it, and I think GitHub has its own concept of artifacts. That is where this is being uploaded. So and yeah, that was the reason to not use URLs and to. Did I answer your question, or were you asking something else, or did I miss it? Or
Yeah, I think you answered the question, although I couldn't. So you uploaded somewhere and then you downloaded it back. And so in another job, you actually create a pattern dynamically, and then you know that the name of that thing is pattern file. And then in the second job, you actually pull it, you download it, and then you pass it to the Meshery CTL pattern apply hyphen F.
yeah.
So yeah, that's what sort of, so when you download it, it's okay. So probably you don't get the URL for the thing that you actually uploaded for the is that right? Assumption?
Yeah, of course. Basically this action takes care of it. As I told you, we don't need to worry about the URL. Just takes a path to that particular YAML that we want to upload as an artifact, and the key with which we want to reference it while downloading it back.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
And this is where it is uploaded, this artifacts, this.
Okay.
And in the pattern files, like what is being dynamic, the it is specific to service meshes, or
Yeah, I mean everything is, I mean we're basically, we can have a template, or I mean not have a template, depends upon the case. In this particular repository, what I'm doing is I have a let me show you the template. So I have a template of a particular pattern file, where I have where I've filled upon most of the things, except for version. I have left the version empty. And wait a second. So yep, okay, so I haven't left it empty, but I had left it empty. I made it because of some other reason. What happens is that it takes this pattern file, and using YQ, it updates this particular thing to reflect upon like latest version, or whatever change we can make it at this stage. And here I'm hard coding 1.4.4. I'm not going to do that. I've just this basically this when I'll create the PR in adapters, I will be fetching the version name dynamically and then setting it here. We can set we can set more than just a version. We can create the entire pattern file at this stage. We can change the name of we can change the name of the services, or we can add more fields and do anything. This is basically the stage where we essentially create the pattern file. I'm just using this one as a template, so that I don't have to create it by scratch and just update the version field right now.
yep, cool. Other questions and or comments here?
No, just I think you're tracking some ongoing feedback. So yeah, as you go to, you'll want to lodge those as issues somewhere to just follow up on. We should identify kind of next steps toward Meshery. And using some of these, we should definitely, if there aren't open enhancement requests on Meshery CTL, we should probably have those.
Like something to get the pod names also.
I think so. I think that's kind of desired. Like there's actually, there's not a ton of intelligence there. If you do Meshery CTL system status, well, there's an open issue right now where you might be running the operator, mesh sync, and the broker on a cluster. If you do Meshery CTL system status against that cluster, Meshery CTL will tell you Meshery isn't running. And so there's no status to report. It's like, well, whoops, that's accurate. Meshery server isn't running, but the others are. And so I'm giving an example of a related kind of enhancement request to be able to say, Meshery is more than just a server. And it is valid that you might have just the operator on clusters versus the server. Or the server itself might have crashed, but the adapters are still running. And so yep, I think tacking on to that, like the ability to just provide a flag as a specific filter that you're just looking for this pod name or this component name. It's probably okay. It's not the end of the world necessarily that like that's not the best example of like, oh, hey, it's very clear that Meshery CTL needs to be updated for this use case. It's like, you know, like it doesn't really hurt that much to run kubectl to figure that out necessarily. So it's not the most urgent one, but I think it's a, you know, it's helpful to have. It makes Meshery CTL more powerful. Yeah, stuff like that. So I think you had other examples where Meshery CTL could be enhanced to be better. Good. Yep, the pattern file. I don't know if you guys just said this, but some of those pattern file, as we identify, the test cases that we have in the test plan spreadsheet, those can drive the creation of any number of pattern files that cover a certain percentage of those test cases. And it's highly likely that there'll be, you know, one de facto pattern that gets run whenever someone is attempting to merge a PR against master, and it tests probably like the happy path, so to speak, like probably like, you know, doing a particular thing. But then separately scheduled, maybe on a nightly basis or on a weekly basis or some other triggered event, maybe it's time-based, maybe not, is a more complete set of regression tests that might use any number, that might kick off any number of times and run multiple pattern files. That is a good next step. Like, how do we, the use of minikubes kind of bothersome based on networking. I think we've overcome generally, mostly, almost entirely, we've overcome like the certificate issue. We faced the lack of access to certificate data when using something like Minikube. I think that that's true. I think what we haven't entirely overcome is caching of, and this might be fixed in the multi-cluster PR that Utkarsh has, but there's some, like the adapters themselves, they'll cache the.
Yeah, actually, multi-cluster PR doesn't address this issue because this actually comes from adapters and how they are actually handling their configuration. That's actually
separate. Okay. Good. So sounds like Ashish and Utkarsh you guys are, sounds like you guys might be working toward creating a few patterns, and that some of those patterns are good candidates for scheduling.
Okay, Utkarsh, I had a question. So, what, because I have not went through all of the use cases of the pattern files. So, in what cases there is a pattern that when that pattern is deployed, we do not expect any pods to come up. We, it's something, maybe it creates a service or does something else, but a pod. So we won't be able to test that kind of pattern files with this workflow, because it has that expectation of pods with it. So is that worrisome, or we can gloss over that for a while, because most of the pattern files are going to deploy pods to do something.
actually, so because using those YAMLs, those pattern YAMLs, we can provision anything, and that anything could be just configs or just secrets or just cluster roles or just so anything. So these things which actually do not create pods, I'm not sure. So yeah, partial answer is that we can provision things which will not lead to creation of a pod via patterns, via those YAMLs. But what I'm not sure of is that what all scenarios will we encounter where we would want to test if actually we may encounter so something like, but again, this a scenario, a pattern that I was writing was I was writing circuit breaking in Linkerd. It will be actually applying a configuration to Linkerd. So testing that out. So testing that the pods have come up won't actually test if circuit breaking is working. The way to test that would be quite different. But yeah, basically what I'm coming to is that I'm not quite sure that what would be the right test for everything. A pod is definitely one of the things, but the patterns that we are writing, like circuit breaking is one of them, retries or retry is something that I am going to write. So yeah, there are patterns which will not exactly translate into creation of pods.
So do you have a better way to calculate diff between the cluster state and the expected state, which can be more whole than just expecting pods?
So actually, so if we just want to check if we just want to test if the pattern apply command has worked and Meshery server has completed responsibility, in that case, the source of truth is almost Meshery server. Meshery server actually does keep track of the things that it's provisioning via patterns. It's called pattern resources, I guess that's what we are calling it. So basically, that's sort of the source of truth, and it's also source of truth because there is only tombstoning. So if even if someone deletes a resource, it's never deleted, it's available in the table because basically we do keep track of the fact that it has come up, it has died or something like that. So that is almost sort of source of truth. But again, that will only tell that this was something attempted and we handed over to Kubernetes. Kubernetes also has successfully did its thing. But what we don't get to know is that whatever thing we actually did, was that successful or not. So basically, actually, it would be more about that: is the pattern apply and pattern workflow is working or not, or are we testing is the pattern working or not? That is circuit breaking pattern that we have written, is it actually breaking the circuit when a threshold is hitting, or is a retry pattern that we have written, is it actually retrying? So is the absolute success rate is 100% or not? Stuff like that.
I think for things like I don't think testing a circuit breaking pattern would be very easy like this, because I'll have to first figure out where the endpoint I'll have to hit with what RPS, and then hit it. And as pattern files change, the considerations would change. So there cannot be a general solution for it, as far as I'm thinking.
That's the goal. Yeah, no, actually, I wasn't listening to the conversation. I apologize. Other than that last part, which is to say, like, well, yeah, if the goal was to, what's interesting is we actually already test traffic split using SMI conformance. So we've done it there. That's not the architecture. There isn't really something we're looking to invest into, but technically we've already done that. The architecture that we're looking to use here, like, I think the hard part might be discerning what the service endpoint is of the sample app that's been provisioned. A lot of times it's going to be the same, but even then, like, that's actually something that Meshery, MeshSync specifically needs to be readily identifying. Sometimes it's MeshKit that might need to identify, because, but it's, whether it's written in whether it's written into MeshKit or whether it's written into MeshSync, is some intelligence that says it's identifying all the service meshes that are there. It's pulling back info about the workloads that are running on them, but it's not really qualifying. It's not really doing much more to say, these are the workloads on this mesh and versus on that mesh. And then these are the endpoints of each of those workloads. It can help qualify those a little bit. Technically, the data is already there. We have a use case for auto-determining the appropriate URL when someone runs a performance profile, that ideally inside the pattern or inside the workflow or inside the pattern, either way, we're able to specify, like, here's the name of the performance profile and here's the name of the endpoint. And actually inside the performance profile, you might already specify the endpoint. And so, yeah, there's, that's a little, that fully end-to-end kind of verification is a little bit deeper than where we are in GitHub workflows, but it's a path that we've tread before, and it's definitely where we want to get to. It's in part like the S&P benchmark GitHub Actions is like, they're generating load, and what are they generating load against? Well, a sample app running on a service mesh. It's like, okay, well, we actually kind of have prior art there as well. Not that I'm familiar with it, but the venue is. Cool, good, yeah.
Okay, so okay, one final remark on this thing. Actually, two final remarks. First is that I think we should, for adapters, checking the pod is good enough. As far as I think, the extended functionality that we talked about, I think inside of the workflow, I have currently set those expected pods, expected namespace, all of those things is required values. What I can do is remove that required to and make it more flexible. So in future, we can use that core workflow and reuse it in a way that we keep adding expected this, expected that in different we can keep adding expected this, expected that into in there, and when we reuse it, we will be expecting different things depending upon how we are using that particular workflow. So if in a pattern file we are actually expecting some services, so we can reuse that thing, and there we can make the use of expected services. So that would make it to an extent a little bit more reusable than it is right now. And for adapters right now, I think it's good enough. So yeah, I'll make the final changes that you said in that PR.
Yeah, like maybe as we add the adapter operations to Meshery CTL, like this might also help with some of the testing. Okay. And Ashish, like as you do this, could you like also mention other issues or other features that needs to be added in Meshery CTL so that like we can also account for these use cases?
Okay, so sometimes it gets really gray for me to understand that what we can what, because the users also use kubectl. So are we trying to completely replace kubectl with Meshery CTL, or there are things that we agree that we should allow kubectl to do and this is not our job? So when this gets gray, I kind of not I kind of fail to figure out whether that should be something like a feature in Meshery CTL, or that would be completely redundant because it will just be a shim over what kubectl is already doing. So if Lee, you can clarify, shed some light on that.
Yeah, that's not always easy to figure out. If we want to focus on more opinionated things, like we would like for the ability, like since kubectl, you can run any type of workload, you know, some kind of job, you can be doing whatever. With Meshery CTL, you ideally can ask it questions like, how many proxies are out there across all the service meshes that are being managed? Like, so that's a nice. So while you could do that with kubectl, it would take a few commands, and you probably have to use some Go templating or some Bash or some whatever, you know, awk and sed and whatever you're going to use. But for Meshery CTL, you should be able to just call one command like, show me all proxies, show me status of the proxies, tell me number of control planes. Like, it's like higher level curation and kind of opinionated. So when we look at something like Meshery CTL, getting the status of Meshery's pods, like enhancing the system status to speak to pod, or to get info about pods, it's like you could use kubectl. The reason that we might, and I think it's an okay answer for now, as we look at entertaining something like that in the future, probably the justification for doing so is that we desire for Meshery as a piece of software to be able to help the user manage Meshery's lifecycle. Like it's nice if Meshery has its own system diagnostics, and you don't have to, when someone's having trouble with Meshery, you say, well, okay, get out kubectl and go get the logs from the thing based on the, it's kind of nice if you just say Meshery CTL system diagnostics. And part of that diagnostics would be its ability to look at its mesh config and say, for this deployment of Meshery, you said you wanted these 5 adapters and such. And so it would look to that, and then it would, and so having an adapter specific status capability kind of leans into supporting diagnostics, So it's not, these are lower priority things. It's why I've had system diagnostics scheduled much further out, and why I don't support or didn't encourage the creation of system dashboard now or system diagnostics now, because we have other more important features to deliver. Because it's really nice and it feels good that Meshery is a piece of software that can help you manage itself, but that's not going to get anyone using the tool necessarily. What's going to get people using the tool is the other things that we just said, which is, how many proxies am I running across any service mesh that I'm running, across any number of control planes that I'm running? Oh, well, that's nice. You don't get that anywhere else. So hope that gives you some kind of general, it's not specific guidance because you can't really give it, but it's some general guidance that we want to lean into things that you can't get with kubectl. Something that we don't necessarily want to do is a little bit embarrassing if right now in the Meshery UI, if you go into the UI and you provision Istio or provision a mesh, and if we're not really giving people the right feedback, so I'm using the UI client as an example of the same type of a thing you might want in Meshery CTL. If you do Meshery CTL mesh deploy, and you're kind of sitting there and there's no ability to like verify, did that deployment go well? And you have to turn to kubectl to do it. It's kind of like, well, like what's the what value are we providing? It feels even worse when you're doing that in the UI, because you go all the way from the UI client over to kubectl to just verify that Meshery, this automation did what it was supposed to do. And at that point, you're like, geez, I should just stay here on kubectl anyway. There's a lot of pieces of software that kind of lean into that philosophy and acknowledge it and just say, well, how do we deploy and how do we deliver this piece of software, this Kubernetes centric capability? Or we're just going to live behind the kubectl. We're going to have our own our own custom resources and our own operator and controller. So it's just Kubernetes native and Kubernetes only. That's not the genesis story for Meshery. Meshery's genesis story is external to Kubernetes. It wants to be Kubernetes first class, but it also wants to lean into use cases where your traffic splitting desire or your performance management desire isn't constrained to Kubernetes. Food for thought. Yeah, it's not easy. But I think you did a darn fine job in general here. Cool. Well, there's another issue that we've been facing. It's in the UI. And Mario is on, I think. He might be able to help as we look at. So this thing has been causing red X's on our PRs for a week and a half-ish. And boy, I haven't really spent time to look at what's going on. I just saw Cypress and UI build failures. So I think the UI itself is okay. But there's an NPM packaging failure and something to do with Cypress. Error, unsupported platform, next Windows 64. Current OS.
Yeah, there seems to be some task that's supposed to run on Windows, but it's running on Linux. Yeah, what I would do is that I would look for the first instance of this failure and then see what code changes were introduced.
That's great. Yeah.
Because the message yeah. Maybe Googling that error. Let me just take a look. Next.
Well, yeah, could have been that. Well,
it's next something with the next package.
Yeah, it might have been a dependency that was updated.
Yeah, I think it's some dependency. Because it's no one's familiar with that, right?
Not really.
So,
I mean,
so maybe it's a dependency's dependency.
Yeah. I think the webs. Well, you guys correct me. The framework or the web server that we're using is Next.js for Meshery UI, and yeah, I don't think no one necessarily spends a lot of time looking at it.
Let's see the runs. So it's been failing since 5 days, right? Oh, but every build, right? There's no like intermittence here.
I'm looking now, but not that I've
taking a look. Yeah, it's failing everywhere. Yeah, some exceptions, but a lot of failures. Let me see. Okay. It's eight days ago and I'm still seeing the same failure.
There was an update from Cypress. I don't know. I don't know. I guess maybe this isn't Cypress related.
No, this is during the some post install, maybe post install steps on Node side. Of course, it is the front end build, but it's not any test. Because I see Husky install and then it's installed and then run. There's just an error in the end.
I'll share for a moment. Just that there's, we occasionally get dependabot coming through and updating a lot of dependencies. One of those
Can you
was to
take a
move us-
look? Sorry, can you take a look at PR 4626? Is it there? Actually,
46.
let me see if it's open. It's merged already. Yeah. Is there anything that might, was there any change in the package, Jason? Perhaps?
Yeah, 4626. I don't think so.
No, right?
There was a little while ago, though, updates from dependabot on one of them was to move us to from next 11 to next 12.
Mhm.
And that we should confirm that we're still on next 11. Like I'm pretty sure I had reviewed it. It wasn't successful, so we
Mhm.
it closed it. Yeah. That failure is in the UI, not the provider UI.
Mhm. Yeah. I think so.
Okay, so So we're still on next 10, is that right? I wonder where it's getting that new configuration from. Anyway, this is yeah, just trying to go back in time to when this was failing.
Mhm.
Uh,
Still taking a look as well. Okay.
Where would this requirement be coming from?
It's in package log hyphen log.json. It's a requirement of a requirement. So actually, because I tried to reproduce this issue locally, I couldn't reproduce it on Linux, although it was reproducible in Mac. So that's strange.
Mm. So, okay, the particular section of this workflow is the job called install dependencies. We get down to, we install Cypress 8.1. We get down to NodeMon, Husky. Like, yeah, do we know what dependent unsupported platform for FS events? Gee. Yeah, it seems like it might be happening about 8 days ago, maybe. So if we, and if changes to the package, would it be package.json? If changes in there potentially move a dependent, rev a dependency, the sub dependency may not be directly reflected, but the higher level a change to a higher level dependency might be reflected here. So when we look at the history, the last commit was 8 days ago, actually, the latest change. So font awesome. Free solid.
Yeah, can you check the, okay.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
Yeah, actually just the log.json that it changed, load diff. Probably this is the time when it added that sub dependency.
Is this PR 4464?
So Dependabot committed this. So yeah, it looks like 4616.
Oh, okay. Mm,
So there's the FS events update was done here, which seems to be, which is mentioned in the debug log close to the failure. Or if I search for win 64. This sharp as well. That's caused this, that library is certainly, that image library has certainly caused me issues on my system. So if we were to roll, I mean, one test is to like roll this back to .3. If this looks like a potential culprit, like, anybody think that that's worth a try to see what, I guess it's worth a PR, right? It's worth a try to see what happens in that PR. Anything else that people think we should try other than that? Now I can't remember which one it was. But okay, so we'll. It's funny. Why is that green check mark? I mean, yeah, and like if for my part, if I'm the one that merged it, I would have merged it because it had all green check marks.
Yeah,
Like-
that's what I'm seeing. It looks like
But I did
there's something.
push, just directly push some other.
You know what? I think that what happened is that there was a change in the package JSON, but that person or in that commit or in that pull request, the package log was not updated. So then whatever change in the package JSON like that would have caused this issue, it was overridden by the package log. I mean, that kind of dependency, it wasn't actually introduced until someone did introduce the package log. So the package log is supposed to override, right? Like whatever dependency resolutions are even if you change the package JSON, like the package log would have a precedence, right?
Okay, yeah.
So in
makes
that case,
sense.
might be more complex. Like for example, if we say the one that is failing, any other change might have been like the culprit added before. Not sure if I'm clear.
Yeah,
Mm,
yeah. It might be that it's this push that introduced that. Like, yeah, I don't know. Like in this push, I may not have. There was a re-upload of the package lock though too. I would have built these. But okay, I mean, like this, I think this gets us to like minimally we can potentially revert these. Although like, so I think in part what you're saying, Mario, is like, well, it may not be the case that any one of these are in fact incompatible. It might be that like the package lock isn't necessarily accurately reflecting.
Yeah, because the committer needs to include it. It's not like the CI will not update it for us. Like it could be missed. So then whatever change that broke the build, it wouldn't break it unless that the package JSON was updated. That's what I'm trying to say. You know, it's because I'm seeing that there's a commit 8 days ago. I'm looking at UI folder history. So there is this commits on the 19th. Oh, sorry, on November 17. So I see there's one failure, but it's on Golang. So then that doesn't count. But then on the 18th, there's some merge with latest. That's the first one I see this starts like failing. It's a commit on November 18th. You need to click on UI there and in the history for UI. And then look November 18. Yeah, there's a lot. I already went over them. Like
Sure.
go to the 18th, November 18th. That, yeah, you see that one. So here is where the UI build starts failing, right? At least I couldn't find any other like before. So here we see, but this is new pattern configuration, configurator UI. And then again, when I go to that PR, I don't see any dependency changes. So that's what makes me think that the failure was introduced in two steps. Like someone updated the package JSON, and then someone else updated the package log JSON based on that, like whatever other changes he introduced, he or she. And then let me see, I'll just, because there are 25 files in this.
So are you saying like a potential fix here is that for a contributor to locally delete their package lock rebuild, which will rebuild the package lock, and then PR from there.
Maybe find that package JSON change that breaks the that locally breaks the compilation. It needs to be like a non-Windows system as per the errors. And then once we find that, we need to bump that down or patch that dependency in some way. Because the yeah. Because I'm seeing that the code, there's 25 files in these PR 4464. There's no dependency changes, but it's the first time that the build fails. So it really doesn't make sense, you know. The only explanation I think is that the prior commit kind of like introduced this, but it wasn't detected until the package log was updated. So let me try to see if I can find it. It should be the prior one, SMI icon update. No, which one was it? Let me check. I'll look at the commits on November 17. Yeah, I'll keep taking a look. Don't worry. Just a sec.
Yeah, sure. Okay.
44, 46, 32.
Does anybody else have suggestions on this? Things to try. It might be one that we can let slide for a moment, or like one that we don't necessarily have to figure out on the call. For my part, you know, like I can go try reverting just that SVG icons as a potential, like it's potential culprit of like pulling in that FS events that seem to be mentioned. Like that's a guess. Right? Could also, like, I'm confused, like I'm ignorant here, so I don't entirely get it. But like, if we were to delete the package lock and rebuild that locally, which would then conceptually refresh and have the correct match between package and package lock.
Actually, I also thought so. I tried that, and I pushed it also, and because it is still broken, so probably that doesn't work. I tried that actually.
Okay, so that's not it. And then other than that, it's probably spending time in that pattern configurator PR, with the 4616, I think. I think it has 540 files that were changed. That I think that's just because it had it resynced with master, but there was much, you know, like 25 that were actually changed in there. So that Utkarsh, that might, given that you're taking the baton in Abhishek or Abhishek's absence. So good. So I'll go toss up a PR just to revert that SVG thing, just in case there's some Windows centric, I don't know, library. Cuddle. That's what I was trying. Right? Not kudo.dev, but cuddle.dev. Is that it? That's what I was thinking of in terms of the test framework. Because Ashish, the work that you're doing, it becomes that, like, you know, we have a test assertions and that kind of a thing that you're basically going to build out a framework for. And I wonder, does anyone else have thoughts on the use of something like Cuddle for the workflows that Ashish was doing? Yeah, Cuddle. It comes from the Kudo Builder project. We forked Cuddle a while ago because it couldn't do something we wanted it to do in the SMI conformance tests. But basically, this is a framework that if you want to automate the creation of new Kubernetes environment, if your developer wants an easy way to test operators without writing Go, the developer QA that you want different combinations of Kubernetes applications. You want to test Kubernetes applications over multiple versions of Kubernetes, like kind of related to, this just provides an easy way to define your assertions. I mean, not this, I'm sorry, that's not the only thing that it does, but it provides a stepper through, if you have a list of assertions, a test that you want to verify as you go through, then it will test those in sequence or in parallel. Okay, I don't think anybody's necessarily familiar with it, but I'll put a link to it in the meeting minutes. We can follow up as we go. Anything else for today? So Navendu will make a release. I'll make a PR. We'll keep investigating the UI item. We didn't, there are code, think about this as you all, hopefully everyone received an email about the plans for the .7 release. Part of the .7 release, in each area, we're identifying code coverage goals. Those code coverage goals, they're both in terms of unit testing and integration testing. So we're about to be at a .6. So we've got some time between now and a .1 to try to achieve 100% code coverage. Like, that would be the goal in each area for each component. So I think that we might say we have 100% functional test coverage when there's automation for all of the test cases that, like, assuming that all the test cases that we have are documented in a spreadsheet, and assuming that that's complete, then if we have coverage for these, for functional test cases, then this is how we would track code coverage there, functional coverage. So. Cool. Okay. Anybody have anything else? Good for the day? Cool. Nice. All right. Hey, Mario, by the way, are you guys, what's Thanksgiving like in your neck of the woods?
Mm-hmm.
Do you guys do Thanksgiving?
No, not in Mexico, but we have at least out of 5. We work with folks in the US, so well, they just don't work.
Yeah.
They enjoy. I don't know. What was it? Some kind of
turkey. Yeah, those lazy.
Yeah,
lazy
turkey. Yeah, turkey. Not sure what kind of a juice, but some kind of a juice.
Gravy, cranberry sauce.
Oh yeah,
I can tell you.
Cranberry sauce. Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah, some pecan pie. I tell you what, I'm gonna loosen the notch on my belt. I'm gonna go into a food coma here.
Go ahead. Enjoy.
Very nice to see all of you guys. Catch you tomorrow at the community call.
Sure.
Bye, guys.
Thanks. Bye.